everyone. Jason Gilbo here. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at the PGA Championship over on DraftKings. Got a huge milli maker this week. How many shares you got in it so far?
Right now, just about one or two. Just thinking maybe put a couple more lineups in there. Not too many. I'm more focused on basically the $4 GPP for this week. But for the milli maker, yeah, I think I'm going to put in around 3 lineups and go from there.
And we'll start. Numerous ways you can go this week. It's always an interesting one when you get these championships, just because we get all the guys up there, we get all the big field, and then we also kind of get this salary where you're able to kind of do not almost whatever you want, but you can still fit 2 guys in up top if you want.
Yeah, with Spieth being only at 12,000 and with the cheapest guy being at 6, like you said, it can be done where you can easily fit 2 guys at the top that you like and be very comfortable with your lineup. For me personally, I think I'm going to go towards more of a balanced approach this week. I think a lot of people will go stars and scrubs to try and pick those 2 top guys. So for the milli maker, I think more balance might be the unique way of being different this week.
Let's look at these top guys. Obviously, Matsuyama is a guy coming off a win last week. Always a guy that I'm fond of. I'm fond of here again, but I know you're looking right at Spieth. 12K, playing really solid. Obviously, 2 wins over his last 3, and then you got the narrative that's going on him as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun week for me. 3 guys at the top have all the narratives in the world for this week. Spieth is trying to compete with history. He's basically trying to win the career Grand Slam, and if he does, then he'll beat Tiger's record for being the youngest player to ever do so. And I'm feeling comfortable that I think he's going to win this week. As of right now, he's 13th in the field for strokes gained approach the green after his last 12 rounds. He's also ranked 11th for strokes gained around the green. So with that being said, and making a lot of birdies as well, I think at the top, I'm just going to pick with Spieth, and then just below him, Rory. This is like his course. Whenever he plays the Wells Fargo Championship, it's usually played at Krill Hollow, and ever since 2012, he's finished inside the top 10. So because of that, he's the odds-on favorite. I'm just going to pick Spieth and McElroy and move on.
Yeah, hard to argue with those guys. I think moving down the list here, you talked about Fowler getting his first championship here, back in the day, which seems so long ago.
Yeah, he won the Wells Fargo back in 2012. That was his first PGA Tour event, and then he's one of those guys he's basically being talked up, being one of the better players that has not won a major as of yet. With that said, I think Fowler is a good option for either cash or for GPPs. I think with his history at this course and with that narrative of trying to win his first major at the same site that he won his first PGA Tour event, he'll be a nice anchor at the top.
Yeah, I like Fowler. 1,300 cheaper than Spieth. He's been really strong over his last few tournaments. Hideki, I do want to talk about him. He's always a guy that I will plug and chug into my lineups week in and week out. And I think this week's another one where, even coming off of a win, that always gives a kind of bump in ownership to guys that do. But he's just been so strong, and he's just always a guy where, if the putter's there, then, he's a legitimate contender to take anything down.
Yeah, after last week, like you said, he's just going to be super popular, probably the most popular play for the week. When you look at the stats, for me personally, for approach the green. He's third in the field. He's second in the field for around the green. He's also second in the field for birdies, and he's first for scoring the most DraftKings points in the field coming into this week. Being basically this, what is he, like the fifth, sixth cheapest guy at the top. Everyone's going to flock to him just because they saw his 9-under round yesterday, and yeah, he's just going to be very popular. If I had to guess his ownership, I wouldn't be surprised if it's over 30%, to be honest.
Yeah, just because of the discount that you're getting from DJ, from McElroy, from Spieth, I mean, those guys are going to be the popular ones. We didn't talk about DJ, but you're kind of on the fence about him this week. I think he kind of profiles well here. I don't mind the price. I mean, I think he's a good pivot play because I still think Spieth is going to come in higher, and I think Fowler's going to gain ownership, and as you said, Matsuyama. So you'll get DJ at slightly cheaper ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I think DJ might be that perfect tournament play. If you look at his recent form, I mean, he finished in the top 20 in his last two events. He finished 17th last week, so it does look like he is getting to that 100% back when he won the 3 tournaments in a row earlier this year. It's just his strokes gain around the green that's a little worrisome for me. He's ranked 123rd in the field in his last 12 rounds. So with that, I don't know if I'm going to play him this week. If I do, he might be in 1 or 2 lineups just in case if he does go off. I'll hate myself if I don't play him and all of a sudden he wins that week. It does happen, but I kind of want to play him just in case. But for the most part, it's going to be a fade, I think.
I kind of like Jon Rahm at 10-1. He's been playing kind of average on the PGA Tour with his last few starts, but I mean, came in with a win at the Euro. Wasn't bad at the Open. Obviously, wasn't bad last week. It's just been kind of more average stuff out of him. But I think this is actually a spot where I can look to use him just because, one, he's one of the better guys off the tee. He's third in strokes gained. Pretty much average outside of everything but strokes gained approach. But overall, I mean, I just think this is a good play, kind of a swerve off of maybe those people that are looking at those 9K guys or who would just rather spend up and go with a Matsuyama or Fowler because it's only $500-$600 more, and those guys have actually been performing over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see his ownership come on Thursday, just because, like I said, with Fowler and Matsuyama being just above him and not that expensive to pay for them. I think Rahm at 10-1, he might be that guy that might be less than 13-15% in ownership in tournaments, maybe for the Billy Maker as well. Yeah, I'm just a little worried about his approach. Like I said, he's ranked 139th in the field, but he's okay for all the other stats that I'm looking at. So at 10-1, you have to pick and choose who you like at the top here. And I think for me, I'm just going to fade him and a few others at the top and just go with Spieth, Rory, and Fowler for me. And yeah, and that's it.
Let's talk this 9K range. It's not a big one. I mean, there's only 4 guys in it. I don't think I have any interest in any of the 9K guys.
I mean, I got one, and it's Garcia. He did just get married. He had a little rough outing last week. I think if you look at his game log, I mean, he finished basically in the middle of the pack, and he finished 37th at the British Open. So recently he's been okay, not great, but Garcia is one of those guys where he does tend to score a lot of birdies when he needs to. between him and possibly Koepka, I think those two guys will be the only two guys I pick out of this 9K range, and yeah, just move on from there.
Yeah, I mean, Rose has been in pretty bad form. Koepka is a guy who's been, I feel like, is bailed out by his putter over his last few tournaments. I mean, you look at his numbers and stuff, he's been playing well. I mean, in terms of positioning and stuff in the standings, in 9,200, I think people will go to him. And I think I'm just going to be hopping off.
Yeah, I'm just going to have a few shares for me personally, but just like last week, I said that he's like a mini Rory McIlroy, in a sense where he tends to score a lot of DK points. He's 32nd in the field for that category, and he's also 24th for making birdies. So with him and Garcia, I think it makes somewhat of good sense just to pick those two, just for the scoring capabilities, what you need for DraftKings. As far as the other two, Stenson, he's hit or miss with his knee, and with Rose, he's just not playing well right now. So I'm just going to fade away.
8K range, you're gonna drop in the hot take right away. I'm gonna throw you into the fire.
Yeah, so basically Matt Kuchar at 8,800. When you look at his stats, yeah, they're okay. But I'm just going to fade on Matt Kuchar just because this is his fifth tournament in a row, and usually that's at the max for most of these guys. There was that little scare a couple weeks ago at the Canadian Open on Friday, I think it was, when he had that little dizzy spell. He almost missed the cut that week. He barely made it. That was due to his like 3 birdies in a row, I think, towards the end. And then last week there was no cut, but he just played okay. But at 8,800, I just cannot pay for the guy that's been playing a lot, and I think his fatigue is going to wear off at some point. So I think I'm just going to wait until he has that week off, and I'll go back to him. As far as right now, yeah, I'm fading away.
I mean, that's going against the grain too, because obviously Kuchar is still going to be a popular play just with his recent form, and especially at the price tag when we keep kind of getting him at these mid-range prices where you feel really good about just plugging him in and kind of going from there. And I think a lot of people will do that, so it's an interesting GPP move to obviously kind of fade that top player in ownership.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you look at his stats, he's 10th in the field for strokes gained around the green, and he's 34th in the field for DK points. Like, he's playing well. It's just that he had that dizzy spell at the Canadian Open. This is his 5th week in a row of playing, and he has traveled a lot for going overseas, playing 2 tournaments there, then coming back here. At 8,800, I think he will be popular, probably pretty close to 20% if I had to guess. And I'm just going to go down to Adam Scott right below him, who's been somewhat consistent. And his stats are showing it. He's 11th in the field for DK points. And he's also 19th for approach to the green. So I think Scott is a nice pivot option off of Kuchar, who I think will be still pretty popular.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I like Scott quite a bit. As you said, he's just $200 cheaper. He's been playing well. As far as the rest of the guys, I mean, Mickelson been pretty subpar of late. Brendan Grace is a guy that, is a name. Leishman's been a guy that I feel like we've talked about over the last few weeks quite a bit. Any of those guys interest you at all?
Not really. If I have to pick one, maybe Leishman, just because he scrambles very well. He's 3rd in the field for strokes gained around the green. Other than that, it seems like Mickelson is still trying to find his game with his brother being the caddy as of right now. but he's still going to be popular, I think, just because people know the name. I think Scott and maybe Leishman will be the only guys in the 8,000 that I like, and there's tons of guys below 8,000 who I do love.
Yeah, we're gonna get to this range here of 7K guys where there's a lot to like. Daniel Berger's, I know you're a guy looking at 7,700. I love Paul Casey 7,800. He's just a guy who's been really good form of late, continuously kind of chugging out top tens. I can't get beyond his price at 7,800. He might be the guy that I just am pretty much 100% on.
Yeah, with Casey, I mean, if you look at his stats, he's basically second in the field for strokes gained approach the green. He's seventh in the field for DK points. So with that being at 7,800, I mean, that's just too cheap for a guy who is very consistent on making the cut and also board. Recently, basically, he's been on form a lot. If you look at Berger, I mean, he's fifth in the field for strokes gained approach to the green, 10th for making birdies, and 15th for DK points. And I mean, the guy below him, Charlie Hoffman, he's been that one player where, surprisingly, he's been up there a lot, making top 5 after top 5. He's first in the field for making birdies. So, I mean, all three of these guys are in play for me. I think for Berger and Hoffman, they're probably going to be at least half of my lineups, if not more. And Casey will be just below that, probably around 30 to 40%.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think those guys are a good staple to making lineups this week. In terms of pivots away, I brought up Louis. You weren't too thrilled, I could tell in your voice, but I like him still. I mean, I look, he's cheap. He's always a guy who I think can contend any week that he plays. I mean, we've seen a couple of top 5s out of him this year, no wins. Been a little bit pedestrian of late. I mean, missed the cut at the Open. It was T50 last week. 7,500, this is a guy, I mean, really before his last few weeks, I mean, was, a regularly kind of top of the table guy for stats. I think you're going to get him at really low ownership. And like I said, I still think if he can shake off kind of whatever he's been through over his last few weeks, he can come around and kind of post a top 15, top 10 at that price.
Yeah, Louis, like you said, Louis was one of those guys at the beginning of the year where it was almost a no-brainer to plug him in and just play him. Recently, though, I mean, yeah, I kind of understand for playing him because he has been up there making cuts and whatnot. But if you look at the last 12 rounds, I mean, his best stat for me is the strokes gained approach, and he's 63rd in the field.
Yeah, it's still not even that good.
So if that's your best stat and everyone else is literally basically below the 100th ranked in the field, I'm just going to not play him. But I do understand the pivot option on him. My pivot play would probably be Schwartzel. He's okay for his approach to the green. He's 19th in the field for around the green, and he's 29th in the field for making birdies. So if you want to fade away like Berger and Hoffman, who I think will be popular this week, I think Schwartzel and also Louis would be a nice pivot option. They should be definitely be below 10% in ownership for sure.
What about the rest of these guys? I mean, you got Brent Steele, Patrick Reed, Jamie Lovemark. I know you tossed out before the show a couple of names that you like also in this bottom 7K range.
Yeah, I think Patrick Reed is going to be interesting below here. This is probably like the cheapest salary I've seen from Patrick Reed. He's normally in that upper 8,000 mark, 9,000 mark. But I mean, if last 12 rounds, it's okay, I guess. But he is 61st and in the field for strokes gained approach the green. He's 70th for making birdies. And for Love Mark, I think is a nice little tournament play. He's 9th in the field for making birdies, 15th in the field for around the green. So with those two, if I had to guess on the ownership, probably around the 10 to 12% mark. They're probably going to be around like 15 to 20% in my lineups. I think they're a really good option this week, pivoting away from the popular plays down here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Guy I do like is Tony Finau, 7K. I think that's kind of cheap for him. Coming off a good performance, obviously, the Canadian Open. He hasn't played since. He's kind of cut back on playing a little bit over his last 2 months or so, but been in pretty good form. I mean, when he's playing, I like that he has a week off here. And overall, I mean, he ranks really well in terms of stats. I mean, over his last 3, I mean, top 10 in DK points, strokes gained total, strokes gained off the green, and then pretty pedestrian numbers outside of that. So I think it's a nice bargain. I think, with Kevin Chappell being right there, I think he's going to draw a lot of the ownership in that 7K range, which there are about 10 players that are 7K.
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of players down here. Finau seems to be that one guy that everyone seems to be talking about being very cheap for some reason. So I worry about his ownership just a little bit, but I get it if you want to play him. Like you said, with his stats, he's solid all around. And then for my guys up here, I kind of like Xander Schauffele at 7,000. He's basically just behind Finau for DK points. He's ranked 10th in the field. He's ranked 12th in the field for making birdies. And also he's finished in the top 20 twice after he won his first tournament at the Greenbrier. So that is a good thing to see out of a rookie, to see that he's still playing well even after his first win. Sometimes rookies kind of just hang it up for the rest of the season and say, I got 2 years now after the win. But it seems that Xander is actually grinding it out and actually playing well. So I think Xander at 7,000 is a nice tournament option, because I think Chappell and Finau will gather the most ownership.
And what do you think those ownerships are going to be? Because I was about to ask, I mean, you mentioned Finau probably being a little bit popular. I kind of see a little bit differently, just in terms of talking 7,500 to about 66. There's a lot of guys that I could feel like may eat into each other a little bit, but that's just kind of my take.
Yeah, and for me, I think there's a lot of popular plays down here. When you look at Finau, for instance, I think a lot of people just know that name, and if I had to guess the percentages, I think Finau will probably be around that 12 to 15% mark, and same with Chappell. I think Chappell will be a little bit more popular just because of his stats, but I think he'll also be in the upper 15% mark as well. I think Xander will probably be just below the 12%, but all these guys in the 7, I can easily see, maybe not a couple of them, but for the most part, for most of them being near that 13 to 12 or 15% mark.
I know you had a couple of fades that were down here that you were looking at. I mean, Ryan Moore, Lucas Glover were 2 of your guys that you were looking to fade this week.
Yeah, I mean, with Ryan Moore, he was that one guy that I like to play towards the beginning of the season. But recently, I mean, he's 121st in the field for making birdies. So with that being said, I think I'm just going to fade him. He has missed like 3 cuts out of his last 6, I believe. And same with Glover. He has missed a lot of cuts recently, and his stats are just as bad as Moore in the last 12 rounds. So down here, I just need to feel comfortable for the guy to actually make the cut, and I think Moore and Glover are just off for some reason. Yeah, I just have to fade away on those until further notice, basically.
And I know a guy, a 7K, Ian Poulter, you talk about in your article. This is a guy who's actually been kind of quietly good of late.
Yeah, he's sort of been on a heater recently. So if you remember, basically the week before the Players, that was his last week on trying to get his fully exempt status on the tour back. He missed a cut that week, and then there was like a miscalculation or something, and then it turns out that he actually had enough FedEx Cup points to actually be fully exempt. And ever since then, he finished second at the Players, and after that, he has made every cut, and yeah, he's been very consistent for the rest of the season, basically. It just seemed that after getting notified that he's fully exempt, that just basically took a huge chunk of stress off of his shoulders. And yeah, he's been playing very well. If you look at the stats, I mean, he's 8th in the field for both strokes gained approach to the green and also around the green. I think at 7,000, I did say that Berger is a dark horse, but I think Poulter might be that other dark horse as well this week. He's just been tearing up, making cuts, and at 7,000, I think that's a pure value for the guy.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind Poulter this week. I do like James Hahn there at 6,900. He's basically top 30 and everything but strokes gained approach. Over the last 3 tournaments, putting's been pretty average. 21st in DK points over his last 3, which I think is pretty intriguing at 6,900.
Yeah, when you look at James Hahn, I mean, like you said, his stats are pretty solid for a guy being under 7,000. So basically, if you just look at his recent performance, I mean, he actually won the Wells Fargo back in 2016, so he knows the course very well. And then, yeah, he's made his last 4 cuts, being 2 top 10s out of his last 4. So at 6,900, just like Ian Poulter, he's just a pure value, and I feel very comfortable for him to make the cut, if not possibly contend as well.
As far as other guys, I mean, you got Bill Haas down here. Just had the other Zach Johnson. I mean, you're all below 7K. So I mean, these are part of the names that are going to be the reason of why people go stars and scrubs, because you can play guys like that. Bung Hoon An, he's another one who's really cheap. I don't mind. I mean, there's a lot of kind of notable names behind this 7K line that you can just kind of plug and play.
Yeah, a lot of these guys are usually around the $1,500, $2,000 cheaper than what they're normally priced at. I mean, when you look at Bill Haas, for example, he's been consistent. He's 6th in the field for strokes gained around the green. And if you look at, say, Zach Johnson, I mean, he's 3rd in the field for making birdies. And I think he's going to be very popular down here. Probably pretty close to the 10% mark. Just because people saw him play last week, and people are saying that this course is very similar to what they played last week. So with that, I think Johnson and Haas and possibly Hadwin as well, all 3 of those guys are going to be popular. And yeah, the list goes on. There's just a lot of names that we like, that we used to like to play basically towards the springtime, and now they're down here below 7. I mean, you can easily pick 3 or 4 guys that you like down here, and just pick 2 guys at the top, and you'll be very comfortable with that lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, was there anyone else lower that you felt like talking about?
I mean, if you go down towards the bottom, where it's Charles Howell, I think at 6,400. He's sort of intriguing a little bit. I mean, if you look at his stats, they're all in the top 50 in the field for the stats that I'm looking at this week. So with that in mind, I wouldn't mind taking a stab at Charles Howell. He's usually that guy, especially at the beginning of the season, to basically make the cut and get you a top 15, top 10 finish.
Usually we wrap it up here with the picks to win it. I know in your article that you already said you feel pretty obvious that Spieth is going to be a guy who takes it home. Who's your dark horse again?
Yeah, I have Daniel Berger as my dark horse. His stats just lines up for this week, and with his basically his last couple of years playing at this course for the Wells Fargo, I think finishing in the top 20 last year, I think Berger might be that nice little, not a sneaky option, but a nice pick that most people are not thinking about picking to win.
I'm going to stay right in that range and go Paul Casey. I just, you know what, there has to be a time where he comes in and gets really close. I mean, he's had a couple of top 10s already this year. I just feel like he's been flirting with a big W. And you know what? I'm going to say this is the week.
Yeah, it's been not that year of first time winners, but recently there's been a lot of first time major winners. So Casey's one of them. Berger's one. Fowler is the other guy. He has the biggest narrative, I think. Well, I guess Spieth has the biggest narrative, but Fowler is right up there, being coming to a site where he won his first tour event and tried to win his first major at the same site. That'll be a nice storybook ending, I guess you could say. But yeah, there's a few guys that have a chance to winning their first major this week.
Any babies being born? I know you have an alert on your phone that you get from the doctor. So
I wish that was the case. Not that I know of. Last week, Gary Willett did announce that his baby was returning home after recovering from birth. So I just tweeted out that it's basically full narrative in force with him. But yeah, for this week, I got no one for any baby news or anything like that.
It's a bummer. I'm bummed out, man.
Yeah, sorry. I got nothing.
That's going to wrap it up for us. You can head over to dayfantasycafe.com, check out Chris's article, and is always changing now over his last 2 weeks format, but definitely give that a look, and good luck this week.